Thank you for staying for this section. I really appreciate it. All right. 2 months before I moved to the UK, I had a massive conundrum. I was on conference call after conference call with my international team, but I couldn't understand what they were saying. And because of this, I literally had to close my eyes and focus only on what they were saying. Get all of the other elements away from the conversation. And even doing that, what I found, even though they were speaking plain English, albeit in a French accent, an Italian accent, a Northern Ireland accent, is that 50% of that conversation was being lost in translation. To say it lightly, I felt very much like a minority, and in many ways, I felt excluded. Even though my peers and my colleagues on the phone with me didn't realize that was happening. As I moved across the pond from the US to the UK, I knew that I had to develop what I call a listening plan. I knew that that listening plan was going to be critical to my success. So I did what everyone in this room does first, and what we've heard about most within the last few presentations. I drew upon data. I looked at the hard facts of the business. I then had one-on-one meetings with all of my employees and many of my customers so that I could really understand what the problems were in the business and figure out solutions. And when I couldn't understand what they were saying, I could ask them to repeat it again. As I did this, I also found that focus groups were highly beneficial, focusing on one subject at a time. That focus enabled me to ask the right questions. It enabled us to have a conversation that enabled the right insights, to develop the right data, to enable the right outcomes that drove tangible actions for change. 9 years later, after I moved to the UK, and now being the CEO of Colt, as well as the TM Forum Diversity and Inclusion Chair, what I found is that this listening plan was the key to my success. It's enabled employee and customer engagement at the highest level. I'm not here to raise my ego and tell you how great I'm doing. I'm here to tell you that this works. My employee scores, as far as my employees looking at Colt as a nice place to work and a place that they would recommend, is 3 points above the high-performance norm. If you look at sustainable engagement, my points are on par with the high-performance norm. And if you look at our customer engagement, our NPS, it's definitely some of the industry's highest within our 2 major regions of Europe and Asia. My conundrum 9 years ago, my conundrum of not being able to understand what my employees and what my customers were saying, that lack of translation, needing to focus on the one thing that truly mattered to change the business. This is the same conundrum that we're facing today as an industry. Nick and I got together 2 years ago. I can't believe it was 2 years ago. And 2 years ago, Nick and I said, we have a conundrum that we need to fix. And he asked me to lead the Diversity and Inclusion Council. I said, Nick, I am only going to do this if we're going to do something that enables real change. So we set off on a journey. We started the same philosophy that we had 9 years ago with this listening plan. We listened. We started to figure out what to measure, what mattered. We built tangible insights from tons of data. We drove outcomes through 2 major installations of looking at this metric that we're now building. And through all this, we believe we have something that will enable real change. It starts with inclusion first. We knew from the insights that we were drawing, that Bain developed, that the Engagement Institute put together, that it was truly that one metric that mattered. We knew that diversity without inclusion was completely pointless. The English was very clear. The retention challenge in our industry is upon us. PwC is saying that $8.5 trillion loss in the US by 2030 because of a skills gap. Salesforce is saying $11.5 trillion loss in GDP for the G20 because of a talent gap. Monster.com is saying 1/3 of employers are saying they have a talent problem. LinkedIn, 64% of the learning and development teams that they work with are saying reskilling is a top priority. And we all know, if you just look around, that we're facing a retirement cliff in our industry as well. The Great Resignation is upon us. The Great Rethink is now a new norm. And our customer requirements on top of this are forcing a different way of providing our solutions to them. We heard today about platforms. We heard today about open systems. We heard today that our industry is in a downward spiral, and if we don't do something about this, we're all going to be looking for a different industry to join in not too long. Other industries have the exact same problem that we do, and they require the exact same talent. So this no longer is an within industry problem. This is an industry problem. These external forces are a massive threat to our operating models. And we do have to change the way that we organize. We also have to change the way we think about people. The conundrum is very clear. The problem that we have is in translation. Nick, myself, members of the TM Forum got together 2 years ago. We tried to find a way to enable the translation, to build a metric that measures both diversity and inclusion, a survey that would provide listening at an individual level. and a report that would provide real insights to enable real change. Over the last 2 years, we've run as many workshops as are happening here today and throughout this week at DTWS, times about 1,000. We've done a gazillion interviews. We've worked with the best of the best in the industry and beyond to find out what we needed to do. We've worked with the works councils. We understand the dimensions of what we have to do in different countries. The reality is, we've done the heavy lifting. And with that, we've been able to develop the first inclusion and diversity score. It has been a journey, but this is a score that will enable real change and enable real business outcomes. As I said, we've done the heavy lifting. We focused, we listened, we used data, we drew focus groups. We've built a metric that will enable real results. I know that you have a talent problem. We all do. And I know that your HR teams are struggling. They all are. I also know that if we come together as an industry and we take the heavy lift that the TM Forum and I have been working on for over 2 years and embrace this industry metric that will be used like any other metric in our business, that we will no longer have to close our eyes and try to interpret and translate our talent problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much.